there are certain people who have played huge contributing parts throughout history and should probably not be forgotten. Nikola Tesla has made a comeback in the last 10 to 15 years, and rightly so. Another character that I'm quite fond of that people often forget is Nikolai Konstantinovich Roerich, better known as Nicholas Roerich, born 9th of October in 1874 in St. Petersburg, Russia. He would die 13th of December 1947 in the Nagar region of India. He was a well-known artist, painter, writer, mystic, philosopher, theosophist, and archaeologist. He was basically Russia's answer to Indiana Jones. Trained as a artist and a lawyer. He would go on quite a few adventures and end up tied in with interests of hypnotism and spirituality. My point of interest was to bring up his passion and quest for the Chintamani stone. I think he's a significant part in it. The man was a polymath for sure. In fact, it's said that the whole family was. His wife included Helena, who was said to be a channel, a conduit, much like Crawley's wife, in fact. But that would come later. He had 2 sons, if I remember correctly. But Roerich himself there'd be whispers of him being a spy. He would get kicked out of China and Tibet for stirring political unrest. At the same time, he was nominated for Nobel Prize, Peace Prize, 3 times at least. And got around quite a bit. From the end of the First World War and the Russian Revolution, he would leave Russia somewhat aghast the Bolsheviks and Lenin's brutal treatment of people. He was staunchly against this, obviously. So they would end up in London in exile, and eventually in America in the 1930s. And that's where they got into theosophy while in London. The Theosophical Society is something we should look at in another video. We're talking Madame Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, many great people. And within that, he started his own schools related to art. His award for Nobel Peace Prize was a lot to do with the Roerich Pact, which he got most of the Pan-American countries to sign up to. And that was to protect art and cultural heritage and buildings. There's also an architecture, and to have these protected in times of war and whatnot for the future of humanity. In New York, what is known as the Master Building in Manhattan, on 310 New York Riverside Drive and 103rd Street West is the Master Building, which was constructed for them, and I always call it the Ghostbuster Building because it reminds me so much of that building in many ways. It was designed as a creative centre for outstanding writers and spiritual leaders. On the ground floor was set up to house exhibitions and conferences. A lot of Roerich's paintings and work were displayed within, and above we would have apartments, so there was supposed to be 27 floors in the original plan. And on the top, the plan was to have a stepped pyramid, strangely enough. And I have it in my head, it may be a fantasy, I may have picked it up somewhere, or it just may be this imagination in my head. Still, by the end of it, what they actually did was change the plans and add another 2 levels, stories, for extra apartments. And still they had the penthouse on the top, which was given to the Roerichs when they were staying there, in which they would have occult gatherings, seances, lectures, just esoteric exploration, the occult. And we are talking the who's who, cream of the crop from the top of society, all visiting these apartments from all over the world, not just in America. It was there are pictures that it's like every world leader. It looks like a modern day UN meeting, and it may well have been somewhat of that going on. But there were many gatherings there, many lectures exploring the occult, and you have to wonder what was going on. But one of my favourite characters as well is Manly P. Hall. In the 1930s, he was there lecturing and quite friendly with the Roerichs, and all the who's who was all there. It's said that Joseph Campbell was one of the first residents there. The meetings, world leaders, seances being held. Helena was said to be channeling for a long time and guiding the society that they formed. He became somewhat of a guru to many people, and a lot of his thoughts were good. You know, he was seeking world peace, and it's not a bad thing. He had his own somewhat Japanese-looking symbol of 3 black circles, almost in a pyramid structure, with a border circle around it. But the thing was the Chintamani stone. He would go on various adventures that would lead him. I'll give you an example. One of the first ones, 1925 to 1929, the Asian expedition, which started in Sikkim, went through Punjab and the Kashmir and Ladakh and the Karakoram mountains, Khotan, the Kashgar, Kashgar, the Urumqi, Altai Mountains, the Orgot region of Mongolia, Central Gobi, Kansu, Sidon and Tibet, with a detour through Siberia to Moscow in 1926. Bearing in mind that was 1925 to 1929 that they went on this expedition. And travel then was a different story. Very interesting. While it was said that during his time that they got involved with Theosophists in London, and he became quite entrapped with the idea of the Maitreya. The Maitreya is a story, it's like a Christ-like return story, and they believed that Maitreya was coming and that they were part of preparing for this, the world. And Jiddu Krishnamurti, I believe, is who they were lining up to be the Maitreya, and he refused that. I have a lot of respect for him for that, because he had a lot of pressure put on him from a very young age and was being groomed for the role. But you'll look at that another time deeper, maybe. A curious point to keep note of. But back to Roerich. In 1922, the Mahatmas revealed to him that he was a reincarnation of the 5th Dalai Lama. And he actually stayed in the 9th Dalai Lama's house at one point during the war or something. I'd have to check that, I'm not 100% sure. While in New York, though, he became very friendly and in fact became somewhat of the guru to Henry A. Wallace, who was a vice president, I think, at one point, running for president, at some point a candidate at least. I don't think he actually he didn't do too well. But he ended up as whatever the position is of agriculture. And he signed off on an expedition for Roerich to go forth in an expedition, supposedly, for the US Department of Agriculture, to find drought-resistant seeds, or plants that would prevent drought, soil erosion. He would go from 1934 to 1935, and it's curious because Wallace kind of falls out of favour over this at some point. But during the expedition, the 1934, they were in the Great Kaigan Mountains in western Manchuria to the Bergen Plateau. And in 1935 they were in Mongolia and the Gobi Desert, all these desert and the Highland Mountains, I think. Anyway, the expedition, they found over 300 xerophytes, collected herbs and archaeological scroll studies, and found antique manuscripts of great scientific importance. There was a lot going on. Let's say the Chinese kicked him out of China and Tibet because he was trying to unite the Buddhist peoples of these countries in India together to form a new alliance for they're coming back at Maitreya. It's interesting. But within all of this, he was also supposedly in touch with the same people, the same masters who supposedly guided the world from Shambhala. And so he went off seeking Shambhala. And apparently never found it, but did find other things. And a lot of his paintings are depicted of him carrying this chest with the Chintamani stone through caverns and whatnot, and it was as if he was returning it to America. And I'll get into more detail in the next video because that's quite long at the moment, and we'll go into what was the Chintamani stone. But keep Roerich in mind, he's an interesting character and well worth looking into. A film should be made about him.